When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped and he returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. He put trumpets into the hands of all of them and empty jars with torches inside of the jars. And Gideon said to them, "Now look at me and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpet also on every side of all of the camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had just set to watch. And they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars, holding in their left hand the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow. And they cried, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." They stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the army ran. They cried out and fled. When they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow and against all the army, and the army fled. One of the most interesting stories in all of the Bible is the story of Gideon and his great little band of warriors. I would like to think of Gideon in my own evaluation as the fighting form. You remember that he did not have the qualities of leadership. He was very modest. He was very humble. He had a very deep sense of right and wrong. In fact, when the messenger of the Lord appeared unto Gideon in the very beginning and outlined to Gideon that he was to be the leader of a band that would liberate the children of Israel from Midianites, Gideon, like all of us, when we're called upon to assume some tremendous responsibility, Gideon began to make excuses. One of his excuses was that his family was not prominent. They were not educated, they were not cultured, and most of all, he said that his family was the least in all of the family of the tribes of Israel. Not only that, but Gideon said, even among my own family, I am the black sheep. I am the least thought of. I am the one in whom they put the least amount of confidence. Nevertheless, the angel of the messenger of God would not let Gideon go. And so immediately he assigned Gideon a responsibility. He said, "These children of Israel, whom I have led out of the land of bondage, they are guilty of a peculiar cycle that seems as though one generation cannot learn from another. And it seems that this has been their history ever since I have brought them out of the land of Egypt. First of all, I say to them, that you never shall forget that it was the Lord God Almighty who brought you out of bondage. And the second thing I want to say to you, that don't you ever forget that thou shalt bow down and worship no other God except Jehovah God." And so these children of Israel, they have done 2 things. In the first place, they have established an idol by the name of Baal. And not only that, but they have set aside a section of land, a territory, a wooded area to the god Ashtoreth, who is the god of immorality. And this is the place where all of the young people as well as the adults do their midnight walk. They Therefore, Gideon, I want you to go and destroy the mountain that you're born in. I want you to hook it to the idol that is constructed of Baal, and I want you to pull it down. And the second thing I want you to do is that I want you to clear out and destroy the wooded area that is set aside to the worship of God and Ashtoreth. Gideon faithful, but nevertheless, he tried and he succeeded. And so then, as a result, to the number of the punishment of God, because of the children of Israel's disobedience, the Midianites had come upon Israel for 7 years. They had lived among them. They had implemented the scourge of curse upon them. The people literally were not only in slavery, but they were at starvation. Whenever they would try to grow some wheat, the Midianites would pull it up, or they would confiscate it. And literally the people were at the brink of starvation, of disintegrating as a nation. Gideon, one of the Israelites, after his experience with God, decided to rise some peace that he had planted in a hidden place. And so he was down in the bottom of the vat of the wine press. There he was trying to shell out a few things of peace when an angel of God appeared to him and said, Gideon, we want you to gather up an army because you're going to defeat the Midianites. You're going to liberate your fellow man, the children of Israel. Gideon said, don't you know that their camels, you can't even count them, and these people are like the grains of sand, and they're like the stars of heaven. This multitude of our enemies, you need to say, the angel said, not only that, but you don't even have an army. You can't get an army, there's no selective service. So you go out and gather up your army. Ask for those who will volunteer. Gideon questioned God. Have you ever questioned God? In fact, Gideon said to the messenger of God, if God be Jehovah God, why are we in this mess that we're in? Why are we in slavery? Why are we at starvation? So why are we thirsty? God, if you be a God of love, why do you let me suffer? If you be a God of omnipotence, why don't you destroy evil? God, why have you brought me to this point? The messenger said to Gideon, nevertheless, I want to prove that God made it. Gideon said, well, how? Angel assured Gideon again that God was with him, that it was God's mouth. And so Gideon said, well, I want to see you telling the truth. It never hurts you to question some things the preacher said. And sometimes it never hurts you to question the will of God. Sometimes the best thing you can do is sit down and wrestle with what you believe. I want to know if this really is genuine. I want to know if God's telling the truth. So he said, I'll go home and barbecue the food. He made some bread. Came back to the angel and he brought his barbecue goat. He brought his bread, unleavened bread, and he brought his bread. Offered it to the angel. The angel said, put it over there on the rock. The angel, in the twinkling of an eye, fire consumed what Gideon had brought, and it looked like that. Enough of it. But old Gideon, the stuff must have been the same. He just was evil. and he said, you know, that's pretty good, but if I'm going to launch out on this campaign, I want to be sure that God's with me and that I'm within the will of God and I'm doing what I ought to be doing. And he said, I tell you what, that I'll bring out a wool, piece of fleece, and I'm going to put it out. And God, if this is what you want me doing, if you're really going to be with me. Now, when the dew falls tonight, you let that piece of fleece be wringing wet, and you let all the ground around it dry. Next morning, go to the Bible, you can get up and run a cup full of water out of the dew, and the territory around it is bone dry. You can say that. I tell you what, that sounds good, and I'm pretty nearly convinced. But now, God, I just want to be sure. And I tell you what I'm going to do, God. Tonight, I'm going to put the piece out again, a piece of wool, and I want that wool to be bone dry in the morning, and I want all the ground around to be ready. So Gideon get up, the piece of fleece is bone dry, and ground all around. Gideon said, well, I believe I'm convinced I'll go. God said, well, how many men you got? 32,000. Gideon said, that's a pretty good number, but that's not enough to go up against that big whole army of Israelites. God said, well, spend 22,000 on the home start. God said, because they're afraid. They're timid. Gideon said, you need to take 22,000 of my men that I have gone right in, gathered up to go against the enemy, and you tell me send 22,000 of them? Oh, God. But I'm the army. Maybe he let his army down to 10,000. God said, well, I tell you what, that's too many. So I tell you what, we want to divide them into groups. If you take them down into the book, he said, we want one group to have their strength. We want another group to have their strength. So there's 30. So Gideon took them down to the river, and 9,700 of them just fell down on their knees, just got on the fall holes and stuck their heads down in the stream, and they just started drinking and drinking and drinking. And 300 of them, they just bent over and picked up the Lord in the palm of their hands and just kept looking for the enemy. God said, Gideon, send 9,700 of them home. They thought more of their pharaohs than they did the enemy. They were timid. They were not watchful. They could not be trusted because they took their eyes off the hillside. The enemy could rush down everywhere down with their eyes. And you take this and you'll go against this bad Gideon said, that's fine, God. Now what's going to be my weapon? God said, those 22,000 is praise. You get all of the comfort, all of the joy that they had. You distributed among them. You ever hear anything so ridiculous? So Gideon said, all right, we'll give these 300 warriors, we'll give them comfort. We'll give them a praise jar that's got oil in it, got a wick. And then Gideon said, you know, I'm still a little bit skeezy about this thing. God said you were afraid. Gideon, take your bodyguard and sneak down to the enemy's camp and see what you do. Gideon, like a thought with his bodyguard slips down to the enemy camp. He sends you there at the tent. And one of the Gideonites is waking up out of a nightmare, and he said to his tent mate, he said, you know what I dreamed last night? I dreamed that there was a round wolf of fallen bread rolling down from the hill, and it just rolled on down into the camp, and it flattened out every piece. Listen, said to him, he said, what do you think that means? Gideon heard the dream interpreter say, I tell you what it means. It means that man Gideon is going to swoop down under these hills, and he is going to defeat every enemy. So Gideon went back, confident that his army, divided them into hundreds of groups. So this 100 go over there in that place, 100 of them go over there in that place, 100 of them go back here. And he left one place open, one apart. Huh? I'll tell you why. He wanted the place for the Midianites to run. Sure. Why, if he'd have had them surrounded and that number of pounds and pounds of Midianites would have started running, it meant they would have been enclosed. Poor Gideon and his little 300 band of warriors would have been slaughtered. And he had to give them a gate to get out of. So he didn't put 100 of them from. He said, give them room to move. Let me tell you the story because I want to draw rapidly some application. You remember what Gideon did? Gideon took his trumpet, took his clay jar. He said, now I'm changing the watch. Tell you what we're going to do. At the signal, all 301 Gideon was having. At 300 years, Gideon said, now, and I blow the trumpet, all 300 of you blow the trumpet, and then we're going to break these clay jars. And you never heard such a racket in all of your life. You go to the day when you practice this right? And that's it. You familiar with the story how Gideon stationed his men where he wanted them, and at the sound of Gideon's trumpet, they all blew the trumpet. They crashed their glass. Their clay jars together. The little old wick lit up, and the Gideonites thought that they were surrounded by thousands and thousands of people. They got confused. They got frustrated. They started trampling each other. They started killing each other. They started murdering each other. They started running each other. And it said that they had stopped. Now that's an interesting story. Now let me draw simple illustrations out of it. You can read it in the 6th and 7th chapter of Judges. That's enlightening. Let me draw 3 simple illustrations of conclusion from this. First of all, Gideon's men were men of unquestioning courage. We need this courage in our Christian life. When the trumpet of God sounds and summons us to service, we should have the courage to respond and not stand and wait to see what others will do. But we ought to be ready to stand up in due time. It is said of Gideon's men that each man was in his place. Courage to stand for principles and values today when it seems as though the whole world is deteriorating about. Courage enough to build a Christian home. Courage enough to exert Christian love and discipline amongst your household. Christian courage enough to stand and be a growing disciple. The second thing was an intelligent cooperation. My imagine if Gideon was in the Baptist church and had this plan, some of them said, well, we got to have 3 committee meetings. We said it's Jerusalem. subdivided. We can't divide them into 25. We do better. Or maybe we ought to put some of them over on this here. And then they say, well, no, we've got to postpone it. We'll have a meeting next month to see if we ought to put those that are 6 feet over here and those that are 5 feet over there. And then in the first place, I just don't believe that it'll work. We've never done it before. Both since this place has been organized, and this man Gideon comes up with another idea, and I just don't believe it works. We have never done it. But my heavens, they got in and they cooperated, and they weld themselves together, and my, oh my, in the name of a living Christ, what could Barnesville Baptist Church ever do if we could get all of the members united for the purpose of extending the kingdom? I'm not talking about all our minds being together, thinking alike, acting alike. I'm talking about all our minds being united in one effort that we're going to seek the work of God with all of our minds, and all of our souls, and all of our spirit, and love our neighbor. Then they had unhesitating. They had an unhesitating obedience. So today, after 3,000 years, we have the church. We have the command of Christ. It is said of the scripture that Jesus loved the church and gave himself for it. There's an interesting old story that has been told many, many times. But it bears retelling over and over again because there's so much truth in it. It is said that Jesus went back to heaven after his pilgrimage on earth, met by the angel Gabriel. Angel Gabriel says to Christ, we're glad to have you back. How did things go? Jesus replied, well, I lived for 33 years. I preached for 3 years, was crucified, died, and buried. And I delivered the good news of God's love to my disciples. Now I have come back to be with my Father. Gabriel is supposed to have said, that's all very well, but how are people going to find out about it? Jesus said, well, Simon knows, and James knows, and John Bartholomew, and the rest, and they will tell somebody else will tell somebody else, until the whole world is girded to God. Gabriel says, suppose you say faith. What other plans do you have? Jesus is supposed to say, if they faith, I don't have any other plans. What's your part? What's my part in this great conflict between the enemy of evil? Every man stood in his place, round about the king. Now, for me, here is a simple thought. Look at it again now. You forget everything else that I have said. You want to come down to what I think is the cream of what I want to get over to you this morning. When God sent Gideon out against the world, he was armed early with a trumpet and with a light. The trumpet can function only as a result of the use of human voice. The light can function only as a simple that of God. The Christian weapon in a pagan world with the presence of the power of God are two things. His voice, his head. His life to live is his life. And beyond this, God has no other plan. faith, it's because I faith, because you faith. Now, what is my fault? And tell the truth. I don't have to say it. Our Father, something 3,000 years or older, can be so dry and so dusty, so much, until it literally does not captivate our interest. And yet when we come to this myth this morning, we come with a mental insight that there is tremendous truth. So may we offer our lives with intelligent obedience, and most of all with intelligent cooperation, so that God